Pastor Doug Jones, President of Watchford and Garland County, and a member group of the Concerned Citizens Coalition. The CCC is a cross-section of civic and bipartisan political groups that are concerned about the action that's been taken by our city manager and the city board in recent days. The CCC has set out about a year ago to identify some key areas and then research them and document the validity of those areas, and then put supporting documents out there, the findings on our website, which is ccc.center. Recent decisions made by the Hot Springs Board of Directors and the timing connected with those decisions is what has motivated us to hold this press conference and to pursue three definite courses of action. Our purpose today is to inform the public of these recent decisions by the City Board of Directors and let them know that it's not in the best interest of our citizens, especially those who impact the city's recent 160% increase in the base water rates. If members of the press do not have copies of our press release, they are available for you if you want. We're here today to announce three separate, rather unique actions of our own. And we truly wish that we weren't forced to take these actions, but we see no alternatives at this time. Here to announce the first actions approved by the CCC is Matt McKee, who's very active in our community and chairman of the Finance Committee. I believe is going forward.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Pastor Jones. We wish we weren't here. We wish we didn't have to take these actions. Unfortunately, the city is again not allowing their citizens and the citizens that they serve to have a voice or a vote on some extremely important measures that they've taken, measures that will cost the citizens literally millions of dollars. Activity one that we're proposing is to immediately begin a referendum petition drive in order to reverse the action taken by the City of Hot Springs Board of Directors at their last meeting. This petition, if successful, will require the city to allow their citizens to vote on whether or not to raise their water rates by such a huge amount. The rate increase is disproportionate because it impacts some of us worse than others. Here to address that particular issue is the Reverend Willie Wade Jr. Mr. Wade is president of the Difference Makers of Hot Springs. He has recently received numerous awards and recognitions for the work he's been doing to improve the lives of many people across the state.
Thank you, Matt. I also represent the Hot Springs Community Coalition, which is a sister group of the Concerned Citizens of Hot Springs. I'm here today to speak directly to the primary concerns involving this devastating rate increase. The major concern is that in the Board of Directors' decision to increase water rates, it only addresses the city's base rate or the minimum rates and not the total cost. In other words, the most affected, those that are already struggling to get by month to month, and those on fixed incomes will have their rates increase to the same amount as those affluent bank presidents, local executives, and even the dozens of city employees who make over $100,000 per year. This is simply not fair. According to recent community health statistics, our city's poverty rates continue to go unaddressed, maintaining around a staggering percentage of 40 and growing. This means that 40%, the poorest among us, will pay 40% over the $100 million bond issue the city plans to obtain. That means the city is forcing the most affected and the least impacted, the poorest people in the community, to pay over $44 million. Clearly, little consideration for this population is involved in the rush to pass this increase in water rates. With the incorporation of these proposed plans, 14,000 poor people who are on fixed incomes and below the federal poverty level, which constitutes 38.1% of the population, will now have a debt of over $44 million, of which 13.6% are SNAP recipients, which is government assisted, and 4.7% are WIC. And there's an unemployment rate of 9.9%, 3.1 higher than the Arkansas rate of 6.8. To add insult to injury, the 3 public formal viewings, which would allow public feedback, were omitted. No one was asked for their opinion, but every one of us is now over $3,000 in debt. The public was not afforded an opportunity to voice their opinion or vote on such a critical, life-altering concern. This petition drive is our last-ditch effort at reaching a successful resolution by allowing the citizens to hear the facts and decide by a majority vote if they want a rate increase. Please join us in circulating these petitions to ensure that voters are considered first in decisions that will ultimately impact the community. This is important, and we need your support and participation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Willie.
All right.
It's somewhat difficult to understand why the city would take such a drastic action without allowing the customers that they serve and the people that they represent a voice and a vote. This appears to be nothing more than a blatant action to ensure that the public would be disallowed from commenting beyond their initial meeting on fast passage. Although it was strongly requested, no public meeting was held to inform the public of why their rates were being increased. Newspaper stories is what we had to go to. They disclosed that the increase in water rates were to be considered by the board for the purpose of paying for revenue bonds totaling $110 million. However, on advice of the city attorney, the rate increase was unanimously passed without being tied to any bond obligations. Reportedly, the non-association with bonds was because if the money derived from the rate increases was not used for the $110 million bond issue, this would result in illegal exaction. We can ask, what then can the money be used for? A board member stated that the additional money could be used for the water utility related expenses. However, the board's history demonstrates that they consistently transfer funds from such enterprise funds for numerous unrelated purposes. For example, the utility was assessed and paid some $1,480,000 for administrative charges in 2006, which is well over 10% of the utility's gross revenues. The newspaper recently reported that $1.6 million will be taken from the water department due to operating expenses for the new $6 million radio system. It likely should also be pointed out that over $500,000 was taken from an enterprise fund to settle a lawsuit being brought against the deputy city manager. These are not utility-related expenses. What makes the unanimously approved rate increase even more outrageous is the fact that $110 million is not needed to improve the water system. In fact, an additional 10 million gallons per day of raw water is available at the current water treatment plant location. This is readily available and accessible just by reading the contract that the City of Hot Springs has with Energy Arkansas. The Arkansas Health Department has also pointed out that the city should first take advantage of this additional capacity before obligating their citizens to millions of dollars in unnecessary debt. The primary concern here, for me, is that citizens be afforded a voice and a vote. What our referendum petition is requesting is simply to stop the wasteful spending and allow citizens to vote at a legally prescribed election. Hopefully, the voters will determine the true facts and the magnitude of the proposed expense before voting. One of my primary concerns has always been the fact that county residents, individuals who live outside the city limits but who are customers of the water utility, are required to pay 150% of what city residents do, although those facilities are in better condition and the city obtained those without having to pay for their installation. My primary point of contention has always been, who do out-of-city customers have? Why do out-of-city customers have no voice and no vote and nobody to complain to when these instances happen. There are now more out-of-city water customers than there are in the city, and many people think it's time to correct this situation. Here to explain what can be done in this area is former Justice of the Peace Bud West. Mr. West served for a long time on the Garland County Quorum Court. He chaired the successful Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee to design, fund, and obtain a new jail, and most recently he served on the now infamous City-County Water Study Committee.
Thank you, Matt. Sir, you mentioned the jail. We built a $41 million jail, and the money the money came from the people because the people passed a tax initiative, and the money was only spent on the jail. The $41 million jail was paid for. The tax went off. It's now been revoted to build highways and extend over the Fountain Lake area, and that'll benefit the community. But the community here, the city and the county, voted for that. That money only went for the jail, and that's a very successful thing that everybody participated in. Activity 2 is to immediately begin an initiative petition to require the public's water and wastewater system be placed back under the control of an autonomous board like it was before. And since 1994, the City of Hot Springs has elected to do away with the autonomous board. And in fact, at the time they did that, there was about a $25 million surplus in the fund of the autonomous board. The thing about that is some of the members on the board say that the $25 million fund really got to the eye of some of the city board members who thought they needed more money to operate the city. They voted to do away with the board. That was made up of people who actually knew how to run the water and sewer department and put those utilities directly under the control of the city of directors. This is where it remains today. Most citizens are aware of the $3.2 million the city spent planning and designing a new water treatment plant to be located on South Lake Hamilton. Most of the money was spent as the state health department told them that the site would never be approved. Most citizens are also aware that over $4 million the city spent planning and designing a new water treatment plant to be located in Hot Spring County with a with a 20-mile pipeline to Lake DeGray. Most of the money was spent prior to the Army Corps of Engineers declaring that no water could be taken from Lake DeGray, and that's none. We could go on with other city actions that appear to be quite inappropriate for a city to run the utility system, but suffice to say we need to place the utilities back under an autonomous board, or even better, under a regional water authority run by the people elected by the customers, not by the politicians. Only this way will Matt and all the customers have a representative they can talk to about water and wastewater matters. This is exactly what our petition does. It requires the vote of the people to transfer control of the city from the city to an autonomous board. And now give this back to Pastor Doug Jones, who will explain the third and final action.
Thank you, Bud. Third and final action is something that's been discussed for a number of years. We feel like it's come to the place where it's almost a necessity within our community, and that is to look at the possibility of reverting back to a mayor, alderman form of government as opposed to the managerial form of government. As you may know, that it started out in the 50s with some 15 cities determining to go ahead and have a managerial form of government. And all but 5 of those cities have reverted back now for accountability purposes. When you have a city manager who's accountable only to the city board, then it kind of limits what we have to do in order to persuade him to come around to our way of thinking, you might say. So that initiative will be put forward to the people in the near future with a petition drive, and let the people decide how they want to be run as a city government. That concludes all that we have today. I appreciate if you have any questions, you just grab us and we'll talk to you about that more specifically in just a moment. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Recently we had a suit that was paid by the city against the assistant manager for sexual problems, and the city paid nearly $500,000 with other expenses that were with it, and that is not worth coming out of the general fund to pay for those things.
I wanted to speak real quickly about the city raising the water rates without giving people a chance to speak to it or to have a say. There are over 60,000 people in Garland County outside the city limits. Over half the water customers live outside the city limits. Those people have no representation inside the city. They have no one that they can go to, that they can complain to, or that they can at least voice an opinion to try and let them know how this rate increase is going to affect them. This is going to affect people who live on limited and set incomes. This is going to affect the poorest among us the worst. It's just really unfortunate that the city would take this step, one that we feel is unnecessary because of the lack of a water crisis, because of the lack of a water shortage even. And we just feel it's unjustified, and we'd really like to see it reversed. We'd really like to see people within the city limits come out, sign the petition to make sure that they have a vote on this issue. Citizens outside the county cannot sign the petition. They cannot vote in the election. But we'd really like to see that change, and we'd really like to see this decision reversed.
We haven't had a voice. We feel that the government, the city per se, it hasn't really progressed. As far as for the residents concerned. And I have to speak primarily from the perspective of poverty level, because it's disturbing to me that of 2 community health assessments, which is covering a 6-year period of time, and the issue of poverty, the rates have not changed. They have actually increased, to show that very little has been done in the direction of helping the poor of this county, of this community, to actually begin to do better for themselves. We always address the fact that people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But when you don't give them the tools that they need to pull themselves up, how is that possible? We feel that it's time that the actual community have a voice, that we're able to dictate and determine the direction that we would like to see the city grow in. When you look around at other cities, compared to Conway, compared to Jonesboro, who were behind us at one time, that now continue to excel in economic growth, it is just a shame that it's just now determined to be a town that primarily results to tourism. And tourism will never be a benefit to the community residents as well as it will to those that are in business, that have the businesses. And we think that the wealth need to be equally distributed so that at least the communities can survive, if not thrive. Right now, it's in a decline, and it's, as we all know, poverty is a man-made concern that when you address it, it can get better, but when you leave it like it is, the people suffer, and right now, the community of Hot Springs is suffering.
Do you feel that the city board has lost touch with the citizens they govern?
I think they have not a clue as to what the real concerns are with the city residents. I think they're not even interested in hearing from the city residents. In holding several health symposiums and community resource fair and reaching out to city government, I've had 1 or 2 to show up for those meetings, and they were designed to help educate the city officials as well as the community on what the real concerns are so that they can be addressed, and then we can all begin to have a better form of life.
My name is Bud West. I chaired the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee as a representative with the Quorum Court of Garland County. We met for 2.5 years, and we asked the public at the end of that 2.5 years to vote a tax initiative to build our new $41 million jail. Our meetings were open. We had over 20 community members from across the board in our committee. Public citizens from time to time would drop in and listen to what we had going on. We had a staff reporter from the Sentinel Record there at virtually every meeting. And following our meetings, there would be an article in the paper explaining what we discussed at that time. When we asked for a tax initiative, we went around and spoke to many civic groups and other organizations. We had 17 organizations endorse our effort to have a tax initiative to build a new $41 million jail. That money was only to be spent to build a jail, and it was. The jail's completed, the jail is open, the $41 million is paid, and that 5/8 tax initiative went on down. The voters voted to build highways with that. So I think a plan of this magnitude for $110 million should be put to public vote. I live in the county. I am a ratepayer for city water, and I don't have a representative, but I feel in this matter I should have a representative, and I think all the citizens of Garland County that are a part of the city water and sewage customer list should have a voice in this, as well as everybody in Hot Springs.